Hey guys, Jay here, and today I want to show you guys, first of all, I think this is wave 12 or 13 something, but the last couple of waves of a Simulacrum run on this somewhat new setup. So I have made a few changes to the setup here, and the character is, first of all, a little bit squishier. I have to get that out of the way first. That is like a disclaimer of some sort, but it is squishier. So that is wave 13, right? But it also have quite a lot more damage, and I will talk about the changes that I've made to get more damage. There's two big changes, and I will talk about them like a little bit. But first I want to talk about Petrified Blood. It is a pretty powerful reservation gem. Why am I not using it in this build? Well, the short answer is because it reduced the maximum hit pool of the character. What is hit pool? Max hit pool basically determine the one big maximum hit that you can take. For example, if Kosis is dealing 10,000 damage on the jump slam, right? If I have less than that of max hit pool, I'll die. That is different from EHP. EHP is basically take into consideration everything. So assuming you are not, one-shotted, if you had some form of very good recovery, your EHP pool will be through the roof. And for example, the most obvious case of max hit pool versus EHP is on block build. So in block build, there's a lot of cases. If you build max block, like a lucky block, so you have like, let's just say 99% chance to not getting hit. But if you get hit once, that hit went through, you can potentially be one shot. But the EHP pool in POB showing you EHP is very, very high, especially if you have like health recover on block on your shield, for example, like that. But your one shot survival capability is not, relying on the block at all. Because if you do not block a hit, regardless of how much EHP you have, you might still die from just that one hit if it is big enough, right? So max hit pool is something that, the Petrified Blood gem is not giving you. So that is why I don't use it. Especially when you are like in a blood magic build, because your reservation is on your life. So you remove a part of your life. Normally also the Petrified Blood is capping you at 50% health, and 50% health while giving you 40% mitigation back is a net loss in terms of like your ability to take one hit basically. So yeah, that is just why I don't use Petrified Blood. The second thing I want to talk about here is the changes into this build. So currently, you can see here I have Righteous Fire going on. It is on a 1 link, by the way. And also, I think the best changes for the build is going to be this bootle here instead of the Inextricable Fate. Inextricable Fate give you 10%, up to 10% less damage taken overall. It is a very, very strong stat. However, this boot, Legacy of Fury, is super good for damage, and also on top of it, it is super good for clearing faster as well. It is kind of like a explosion effect on Scorch enemy, and you scorch enemies simply by wearing this boot. Nearby enemies are scorches. It has a pretty big AoE, and overall it just clear the encounter, whatever encounter in map or Simulacrum here. You clear much better, much cleaner, much faster. It can potentially even freaking one-shot the bosses if a lot of monster is scorched and they explode nearby a boss enemy and the burn will stack on top of each other. It is not an ignite, so it's not capped to one stack of ignite. I do notice like sometimes the boss just like it has a very, very strong damage over time effect on it. And it's not ignited. If it is ignited, I will see it, but it's not ignited. So potentially this can do that as well. But mainly it does improve the clear speed by a lot. And in terms of like consistency, damage for a single target, the Scorch is very big. The default here, because it is nearby enemies as scorch, so you do not need to apply a hit to pass any threshold to apply the ailment. No, nothing like that. It's a flat 10% scorch at base. And then you have on the boot itself increased effect of scorch. This is roll from 30 to 50%. So if you have even a minimum roll, you have 13% scorch. If you have what is like mine, not maximum but over 40%, you will have a 14% scorch. And if you have 50%, which is the maximum, is 15%, which is very strong. I think the minimum roll or the maximum roll doesn't, you know, have that big of a difference. So what I am going to recommend you here to get is, look for this, +1 maximum endurance charges. It is pretty cheap, actually, still pretty cheap. So if you play this build, I would recommend you to have this boots here. I saw Pox use on his RF build a lot, but I forgot it exists, this league, for some reason. I forgot it exists. It is such a nice addition to the build. It improved the speed that you are clearing the Simulacrum significantly. You just saw I, you know, finished the last wave of the encounter very quickly actually. If you have this layout, this is the best layout for Simulacrum, by the way. I can clear it in like probably the, if I focus on like moving around and, you know, being efficient in terms of like clearing the map, probably I would finish this in like 12 to 13 minutes something. But if you like AFK here, you clear everything, you go down here, you AFK, and then you go back and get the loot, things like that, you will clear the whole encounter in like 15 minutes, maybe a little bit less, right? So you go from roughly 20 minutes to roughly 15 minutes. That means overall you are doing roughly 4 Simulacrum per hour instead of 3. That is a lot more currency. That is a lot more efficient in terms of farming. So this thing is an absolute godsend to the build, right? Coupled with the next change, Righteous Fire. So this build is very socket intensive. So we have 6 link for Frostbolt Ice Nova, 6 link for Vortex of Projection, and 4 link needed for the Frostbolt, right? So we left with very few sockets to work with. We cannot have extra on rings because we use unique rings. They do not have extra socket on a ring, right? So here, Purity of Element and Eternal Blessing is without a question a must-have. Flame Dash is, for me, without a question a must-have as well. It's a lot of quality of life to just have a nice, simple mobility ability here, right? And in order to fit in Righteous Fire, before I do have Steel Skin linked to automation. It is very nice. Right now, I just move it to the Cast When Stun utility setup here with Tornado and Punishment. The only scenario where it is worse compared to automation is, for example, if you're just fighting an encounter here, you have a bleed on yourself. But right when you get a bleed, you finish the encounter. You do not have any nearby enemies to fight. You suddenly lose a lot of recovery because you are not fighting as naturally a Juggernaut, right? From the untiring, this node over here. So when you lose that recovery and you still get the bleed on you, the automation can still trigger Steel Skin to remove the bleed. But Cast When Stun does not. It's not that big of a deal, but it is something, right? Sometimes if that is a very heavy bleed, if you're unlucky, if it is the wrong encounter, right, and then you might have a very strong bleed that potentially can be dangerous. But that is the only very rare situation where automation is better than just Cast When Stun. Other than that, Cast When Stun here for Steel Skin, so we saved 1 gem slot and we can put in Righteous Fire. Righteous Fire, 1 link, the damage on it is negligible, but it gives 39% more spell damage when we have Righteous Fire on, right? So 39% more multiplier on top of everything we are having is massive improvement in terms of damage. So we are clearing much faster. I would recommend you to put it in the build if you are farming Simulacrum. In maps, a lot of times this feels very inconsistent and sketchy because there's a lot of things that can screw up with your, regeneration, or it can be like random damage over time effect that will be very dangerous if you are turning on Righteous Fire, because Righteous Fire is not just damage to enemies, it also damages yourself. And degen from the Righteous Fire, for example, I will put it on here, right? You can see my life, it goes a little bit down to like 5k from 5.5k, and then it shoot back up. Why? Because I have removed these points over here, so I do not have as much recoup as before, but I put in the 3 regen nodes here because it is right on the way. If I travel through here, I would get the hearty wheel over here. Is better. It is hands down much better. But right here, right now, I'm okay with this one. Surge of Vigor. Every 4 seconds, you will regenerate 50% of life, and you also have some regen on the small node here. So, yeah, it does help you to sustain the Righteous Fire. Without the node, without the wheel, without the changes, I will just gradually degen if I do not have flash up. If I do not fight anything, I do not have enough regen to sustain Righteous Fire. And here is the change that I need to make, right? Just have it here. And it will allow me to sustain the life. If you do not make this change, your life will gradually just degen over time, and eventually you will reach a very low life threshold. Why is that bad? It is because in the Simulacrum, you run Simulacrum at the end of the wave, you collect your loot. Sometimes if you are like full, you have to go here, you have to dump things on your stash, for example, like what I do right now as an example, right? Your buffs will run out. And within that time, if you also degen down a lot, well, you are entering the next fight with no endurance charges, no flash up immediately, and very low health bar. So that moment, you are very vulnerable. And so I would only recommend you to put the Righteous Fire in here and make these changes, right? To accommodate only farming Simulacrum. In maps, normally I don't even turn on Righteous Fire, especially on things that can potentially screw up with your regen, right? I normally don't even turn it up. Maybe I turn it up on boss fight, so when before I finish the map, then I want more damage to finish the boss fight faster, then I do it. But normally I don't even turn it on because our damage is enough to do like the mapping content that we want to do, right? So yeah, that is everything I want to mention in the video. So first, why I don't use Petrified Blood, because it reduces the maximum hit pool that you can take. Second, so you are more vulnerable to one shot, right? Second, add Legacy of Fury to the build. This is hands down highly recommended by me for this build. Used it. Feels so much better. Unless you are dying, you know, stick with this boost. The only case that you do not want to use it is you are dying a lot and you want to use the Inextricable Fate, because not only is it like 10% less global damage taken potentially on max Vine stack, it also is 100 life, up to 100 life. So this boot doesn't have any life. That is a little bit of a downside, but if you can tank the encounter, the Simulacrum without it, this is hands down much better, an upgrade, right? And Righteous Fire. If you made the change like I do, like I explained, then you can sustain Righteous Fire and put it in, and you will basically finish the encounter. You will farm much faster in the Simulacrum at least. So yeah, that is everything I want to mention in this video. I will leave the link to the current character, the current setup that I'm having here, the POE, in the description. It's not going to be like a very well-rounded like starter included and end game version like I have in the build guide video. Everything that I have said and mentioned in the build guide video is still correct. That is a more defensive setup. This is a more offensive setup. You do sacrifice a little of regen, so life recovery, and you also sacrifice a little bit of like EHP for this change. But overall, it does, you know, boosts the clear speed and the damage of the build. So that is a trade-off that I am personally willing to take, and I will show you in the POE, you know, exactly what my setup currently is. Also, potentially, if you want to put a little bit of money into the build and you are having you know, money, and then you are not dying instantly, right? You can remove this thing. You can remove nature's affinity if you do not need this to survive. You can put in here rational doctrine. It will allow you to, with this current setup, it will allow you to have consecrated ground on you like almost 100% of the time, which is 4% regen, less reduced curse effect on you, pretty nice, and also it lingers on you when you move. So it is a very nice quality of life thing to have. It's not a must-have. It's not necessarily even better than this one, but you can do that, right? So anyway, that is everything I want to mention in this video. Please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you think this is informative, helpful to you in any way, or interesting build, right? I hope you, if you follow this build, you are going to have a great time with it. And see you in the next video or on the live stream. I will probably start streaming a little bit after when I post this video on YouTube. So come there. All the link is in the description. My Twitch, you know, the build guide video, and also my Patreon if you want to support me further. So thanks everyone for watching again, and see you in the next video or on stream. Peace. Peace. Yeah, what do I say?